You're listening to the LA Football Podcast.
Welcome back to the LA Football Show here on the LA Football Network, LAFBnetwork.com, your destination for Los Angeles football, live on the Mightier 1090 ESPN Radio. Thank you all for making us a part of your day. This is your UCLA Bruins segment of the show, and plenty of great things to talk about with this UCLA Bruins team who have been active in coaching hires and extensions, have some players that performed very well at the Combine, have a pro day coming up next week. A lot of exciting things out in Westwood to get into. I'm your co-host, Ryan Dyer, joined as always by the madman, Jamal Madney. My brother, welcome back from the break on radio. Excited to get into your mighty Bruins and kind of the excitement in Westwood. I think there's a lot of hype around this team and about this program, past and present.
I agree, Ryan. It's so great to be doing this with you and chatting it up here about the mighty Bruins. I think the stability that has been brought now between the hiring of Martin Jarman and Chip Kelly, some of the unique things that they are doing in terms of hiring, in terms of recruiting, in terms of transfer portal and player development. You throw the incredible resources that UCLA has in terms of campus football facilities. This is the most stable, sustainable excitement that I have seen from UCLA football since I was 10 years old, when it was the days of Cade McNown and Danny Farmer in 1997, 1998, those Cotton Bowl teams, the Rose Bowl team. There's just so much to be excited about with the mighty Bruins of UCLA.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll get into some quick Combine notes, talk about Chip Kelly and his extension and some of the other moves they made. But show is always brought to you by our friends at BetOnline. Head to betonline.ag today. Use our promo code BELIEVE. That's spelled BLEAV. When you use that on your first deposit, you get a 50% welcome bonus, free money for you to play with, and bet on all the sports your heart desires. So betonline.ag, promo code BELIEVE. Tell them the guys at the LA Football Network sent you. So Jamal, Combine came and went. DTR, fourth fastest 40 time. We knew how athletic and how fast he is. Not a surprise there. Charbonnet looked very polished and I thought did himself a lot of good favors. Not that he needed any, but I guess for the outside world that doesn't watch West Coast football could see how good he is. Jake Bobo, I thought looked very, very good as well. And did some good things. John Gaines, with what was the drill that he, the top time in drill. There's a report of whoever finishes top ends up having a very, very good NFL career for whatever reason. It's just, I don't think it's necessarily a fact that leads to that, but it's just a nice correlation. And so John Gaines, so in reality, all Bruins out in Indy, very, very successful week. Your overall takeaways from our guys out there?
Absolutely, Ryan. I think the Bruins did an exceptional job at the Combine. I think we got to start with the Terminator, Zach Charbonnet, who by all accounts is a top 2 running back in this draft and did nothing but enhance, I think, his stock. I think there's still a consensus that Bijan Robinson's the first running back off the board. But I think the gap between Bijan Robinson and Zach Charbonnet is a lot smaller after the Combine than it was before. And I think there was a clear pecking order there of 1-2. And I think we've shifted a little bit to a 1A, 1B situation. And we've gotten a lot of our friends of the network, Ryan, Brentley Weissman, and others have just consistently reiterated how surprised they are at how good Charbonnet is and how they didn't realize this over the course of the season. But as the season wore on and as now we're in the Combine and the draft circuit, it's just that much more evident. So Charbonnet is going to be second round guy, middle second round. If Bijan's going early second round just because of the running back position, I think you're talking about within 12 picks of Bijan is going to be Zach Charbonnet, and he's going to make a team very, very happy. Very excited about DTR. We all know that he measures so well in terms of the speed, in terms of, the revolutions on his ball were considered, top-notch. In terms of the velocity of his throws are considered top-notch. And then I think he interviewed very well this week. I think when people asked him questions, he looked poised. He looked like a leader. He had the presence. And I think there were some questions there because you sort of see DTR in these sort of different scenarios, hurdling guys, signing autographs, jawing with defenders, talking smack, getting 15-yard penalties. So I think a lot of teams had questions about maybe maturity and how much can he sort of dial it back when he needs to and dial it up when he needs to. And I think he blew people away in the interview room. And I think DTR is going to be a hidden gem here. And I think someone with the right vision, like the Patriots and Bill Belichick, like the Eagles, like others, I think are going to see that and take a chance, especially when you see what's going on right now, Ryan, with Baltimore, with this whole Lamar Jackson situation. You could see the Ravens draft him. I think there's a lot of different places for DTR. Bobo is Bobo, and we knew what he would bring to the table. I think the size and the catch radius and I think the intelligence really came to light during the combine. And it just speaks to why Bobo picked UCLA. He talked about it this time last year. I'm picking UCLA because Chip Kelly is going to get me most physically and mentally ready for the NFL. And I think that's what you've seen in terms of his catch radius, his route running ability, and then his ability to understand defenses, find soft spots on the field and in different coverages, I think came to light. And then John Gaines was built. He is built like the prototypical guard. And, I think everyone got an opportunity to see that. So it's sort of crazy to think about it, Ryan, but I actually think this is a year where if you kind of go 4v4 between the UCLA top prospects and the SC top prospects, I think this is a year that UCLA won. I think UCLA beat SC in terms of the combine, and we'll have to see kind of where it shakes out. But I think overall, I think UCLA players are going to be drafted higher than the SC players this year.
Yeah, well, I mean, you'll have Addison go first, and you'll probably have, just because of injury, all four UCLA guys potentially go before any USC guy next, because you have Travis Dye coming off an injury. That would have been different had he been healthy. Andrew Voorhees shreds his ACL, so unfortunate. And, Mekhi Blackman, I take it back. Tuikolovatu will probably be taken, second, maybe third round. So he'll be in there. But yeah, you'll have that slew of UCLA guys go. I think, I don't want to talk too much on it because we have other stuff to get to, but I don't need to say much about Charbonnet. We know how great he is. We've gushed over him all season long because he's that good. Doesn't get the love he deserves. Came in 6 foot, 214, ran a sub 4.5 40, which some people are calling slow for that size, which is crazy to me. Like, I don't know who clearly people haven't watched UCLA football games if they are calling Zach Charbonnet slow. I mean, he's not a CJ2K, Chris Johnson in terms of speed, but he's plenty fast for the type of running back he is.
CJ2K reference, baby. I love it.
Yes. Throwing it back. So Charbonnet, did nothing but just build his stock even more, which was already the number 2, going to be the number 2 back taken no matter what, I think. DTR, I think, elevated his. I know we've talked before, Jamal. It's like, man, this is a guy that could go as early as the 3rd round or undrafted. Like, it was so unknown. I think now we can say this guy for sure will not go undrafted. I think DTR will for sure get drafted. Still a little unknown where. I could see that 4th, 5th round being a real good sweet spot for him. And then Jake Bobo, he's a guy that, so we talked to him. Both the Rams and Chargers have reached out to him, which I think it's overplayed. I think fans read too much into that, but it's still cool to see that our LA teams are talking to the LA kid. So said he'd love to stay in SoCal. Obviously, why wouldn't you? But hey, I think he would be a great fit for either the Rams or Chargers because of the versatility and skill set he brings. Honestly, with the Chargers, very similar skill set to someone like a Mike Williams. But if he can be even close to the caliber, then that's a big name that they could shed contract later if Jake Bobo can kind of do that same type of thing. So I thought he had a really good comment, like you said. And then John Gaines I think John Gaines is the guy, Jamal, that will probably get drafted a lot earlier than a lot of people expected. I think, like you said, he's one of the leaders of the team. He was one of the ones at the Pac-12 Media Day that we saw. Just a stalwart on that line that ended up beginning of the year, a lot of criticism. By the end of the year, arguably considered the best offensive line in college football, and then tested really well, smart cat. And he's just a guy that no one's really talking about that is going to be probably a top 5 guard taken. I bet that would not shock me if he ends up being the next Bruin taken after Zach Charbonnet and just not getting as much love because he plays guard, which not a lot of people talk about. So overall, I'll get your last thoughts if you have anything, but I thought just a really good combine from the Bruins players.
Absolutely, Ryan. And I think this only helps the perception of Chip Kelly as a talent acquirer. And so much a conversation has been made about his ability to recruit traditionally. We know he's made inroads in the transfer portal very successfully. But when you combine the fact that UCLA had the third most players drafted last year of any school in America, and then now you follow that up with how strong I think the combine was for the Bruins. We're going to have some Bruins taken very, very high. This is just that domino effect and the momentum that builds. And now the next pipeline of kids says, hey, UCLA is a place where I can play at the next level. Now with everything else that they bring to the table in terms of academics, campus, pedigree, all of the great things that make UCLA, the values, let me put it all together here. And so I think this is just another great day for Chip Kelly to further solidify his standing as the long-term solution for the Bruins in what I hope is the better part of a decade plus.
Yeah, and a guy we didn't mention because he wasn't at the combine, but Antonio Malfi, I think will also be drafted at the guard position, even though he wasn't at the combine. Just had a really, really solid year. Will, our guy, Will, interviewed him on the Bruin Bible, so Bruins fans, make sure to check that out. You can hear from Malfi. He just had Eric Kendricks on, who's a free agent. Maybe Eric's coming home to LA. He also had Quantrez Knight on, so some good interviews there for our guy, Will, for Bruins fans. So you had a perfect segue about Chip Kelly. But before we get to his contract extension, I just have to tell a little quick story because it was one of those come to Jesus moments, if you will, on my flight home from Indy, Jamal. And you don't anymore, but you used to fly a lot, right?
Oh yeah.
Did you travel a lot more for work?
A ton.
Okay.
A
Did
ton.
you ever have any like wild turbulence experiences, or for the most part had pretty smooth rides?
Oh, yes. No, there was one that was, still, I wake up in a cold sweat every 3.5 weeks thinking about one flight in particular.
Okay. So that's where I'm getting at this. Was it a smaller plane or was it a larger plane?
It was actually, Ryan, it wasn't a domestic. It was actually, me and my wife were on our honeymoon last summer and it was landing in Paris.
Recent.
It was recent.
Okay.
And it was landing into Paris in the middle of a storm. And the plane, I kid you not, dipped about 500 to 1,000 feet, like kind of in one shot. And the plane made this noise, and people started screaming. And honestly, in those moments, I thought, you know what? We had a great run. And if this is how we got to go, this is how we got to go. And I still sort of think about that turbulence from time to time. And I know my wife does. And, she doesn't even want to think about it. But that was very, very scary. And, we're talking SC here, Ryan. My great buddy Ashley Fernandez. He and I have, season tickets to USC football as well as UCLA football. And he was one time we ended up watching Flight, that Denzel Washington movie. Over a weekend.
Upside down.
I swear to you, I was afraid to fly the next 5 times after watching that movie. So those are my traumatic sort of flying stories.
So you're like breathalyzing the pilot before you get in, like, have you been drinking? Like, let's make sure you're good. All right. So for me, for whatever reason, annoyingly, I had from Indy, I had a layover in Washington, D.C. So I went the opposite way, Indy to D.C. and then straight from D.C. to L.A. So it was already a 10-hour travel flight experience, which I was not looking forward to. I didn't realize it either. Not to get too deep into this, but when I booked my flight, for those who don't know, the call sign or the 3 acronym for DC is IAD, which I assume is International Airport of Dulles. For some reason, I was late when I booked my flight. It was kind of last minute. I was going quickly. I saw IAD and I assumed Idaho for whatever reason. So I was like, all right, whatever. I go from Indy to Idaho. And then the day of, so on Friday when I'm flying back home, I'm checking into my flight and I'm like, a freaking layover in DC? Are you kidding me? So I was already not happy about it. So get to the airport. Here's the funny part about it too. On my flight, commercial, United Airlines, on my flight, head coach of the Washington Commanders, Ron Rivera. So I'm like, oh, okay, this is starting off good. I'm like, all right, I got and some of his staff too. It was like their assistant special teams coach. So I'm like, either Dan Snyder is that cheap, or Ron Rivera is just that type of guy. It's like, I'll just fly a normal airline. So anyway, smaller plane, 2 seats on each side. Weather in Indy's not great. It's been raining all day. So I'm already like, okay, great. I'm in a small plane and the weather's bad. We take off, a little bit bumpy taking off, but it wasn't as bad as I expected. It was one of those where we didn't have any drops, but it's like the plane was on like ice. It felt like we kind of went side to side a little bit, but it wasn't bad. Get in the air. I'm like, okay, we make it through. So we're going through. It's from Indy to DC. It's like an 1.5, 2-hour flight. So not a very long one. And captain comes on. He's like, all right, we're about to begin our descent. Like super calm too, which is wild what's about to happen. About to begin our descent. Make sure your seatbelts are fastened. We're actually going to get you 20 minutes earlier. So talk to you guys on the ground. Within 10 seconds of him hanging up, the plane does a quick right, like skirt, and then drops probably 1,000 feet to the left. The guy behind me didn't have a seatbelt on yet, flew up, hit his head on the ceiling. People's iPads and phones are flying everywhere. For 20 minutes, Jamal, this went on like this. It wasn't a one-time thing. For 20 straight minutes, the lady next to me, older lady, is like gripping my arm. Like everyone was just like, what is going on? We're getting tossed all over. The girl in front of me ended up throwing up. And it was the weather coming into DC was so bad that we didn't break through the clouds until we were probably literally, I'm not exaggerating, 150 feet above the runway. All of a sudden I'm like, oh, thank God. We finally saw it, landed, everyone, clapped, cheered. So anyway, that's the gist of it. But it was a terrifying flying experience. I was just the whole time like, just please let me see my wife and daughter again. Please let me see my wife and daughter again. Like, and then the worst part, Jamal, though, is I get there. I didn't got to plan again to make a 6-hour flight from DC to LA. So I was already traumatized. And I had literally a 30-minute layover to like, all right, grab a slug of quick whiskey back in the waiting area. And like, all right, let's do this again. I got to go right back into that storm. So that was exciting.
Oh my God, Ryan. I mean, remind me never to fly with you. I think that's the moral of the story there. If you see Ron Rivera or Ryan Dyrud on an airplane, run for your lives. That's the takeaway for me.
Well, it's funny. I'm sitting here thinking the whole time. I'm like, there's no way this plane's going down. They're not going to let Ron Rivera die. That was the whole time. Like, yeah, Ron Rivera in the flight. They're not letting this thing. This is a DC airline with the head coach of the football team. Like, they're not letting this thing go down. So that was like my saving grace. I'm like, they're not letting Ron Rivera die. They're not letting Ron Rivera die. So anyway, I probably talked way too long because, of course, we have just a couple minutes left. But I wanted to quickly mention Chip Kelly extension, both ecstatic. He's now locked to the Bruins through 2027. Just your thoughts on his extension and being here in Westwood for the long term.
I love it, Ryan. And I also love how sort of fiscally responsible it was. I mean, he's going to get $6.1 million over the next 2 years in 2023, 2024. And then that buyout number goes to 0 after 2024. So there is an out there if, things don't work out, which I don't believe will be the case. I think he's going to seamlessly go into the Big Ten, and then he gets upped to $6.2 million in 25 and 26 and 27. So I think he's getting paid well. He's getting paid handsomely, and there is flexibility on both sides after year 2 where they aren't dealing with these massive buyouts and this dead money. And it really, again, shows how much the administration has learned from bad contracts to Steve Alford and Jim Mora and Ben Howland, and that they're really understanding what it takes moving forward. Kudos to Martin Jarman. And I think Chip Kelly is just on the cusp of finding his stride at UCLA. This is going to be a seamless next 4 or 5 years in terms of success, significantly more than he had his first 5 years. Dante Moore is really going to usher in this era for UCLA in the Big Ten. I love it all around. My dream is to see in the year 2035, Ryan, that Chip Kelly's name goes up on the Rose Bowl press box right next to Terry Donahue's. That's what I see happening. And I think this is going to be Chip Kelly's last job as a head football coach. And it's going to be bringing UCLA football back to where it belongs, which is perennial top 20, perennial contender in the conference.
Yeah, absolutely. And I saw this was not like a AP poll, but I saw a very early preseason rankings. They had UCLA at 17. And so, that's a good place to start for this Bruins squad. And just a great tip of the cap to Martin Jarman, who's just been so stellar since becoming the AD at UCLA and locks in Chip Kelly. And, I think that's a very wise move and well-deserved I know there's still some fans on the fence for whatever reason, but I think we've seen over the culmination of these 5 years, the growth, the culture, the team building, everything has gotten better every single year over year. And now we're in this period now where we can see that hopefully reap the benefits off it. And then as they go to the Big Ten, really reap the benefits off some of those transfers and some recruiting things. So
and the
final minute, Jamal.
The last thing I'll say there is his willingness to change and adjust is profound, even with talent development. Hiring DeAnton Lynn, who's so different from Bill McGovern, so different from Jerry Ozanero. They're getting younger. They're getting more prevalent in today's culture. And then promoting Deshaun Foster to associate head coach, absolutely the right move. Foster has been transformative in terms of revitalizing this culture, and Chip recognizing that and promoting these guys is also a huge feather in his cap.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to end with. So it's perfect. And it tells you something that Foster has garnered a lot of interest, the Rams included, by NFL jobs, and decided to stay with Chip Kelly in Wested and what they're doing in UCLA. So awesome to see what this coaching staff is becoming and these recruiting, and big hats off to Chip and Martin Jarman. But that's all the time we got for this UCLA segment. We'll be back for one more segment on radio. Bruins fans on podcast. We'll talk to y'all again next week.
You're listening to the LA Football Podcast.